My name is Priscilla Ozodo-Acevedo, and this is HTV, Hear Their Voices, the Icon Podcast. It's such a joy to welcome you to this episode of Hear Their Voices. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And ICON is the International Committee on Nigeria, and you might be like, what in the world is that? Well, we are an organization that promotes human dignity, the right to live, and the protection of the vulnerable from all forms of persecution in Nigeria. So we are here today to discuss, in this season, we've been talking around the theme, Hope for Nigeria, ICON's vision for all Nigerians, right? And we are talking to you and to our guests and allowing us to explore the situation in Nigeria, but not with a negative viewpoint, but with hope, knowing that the work we're doing today is going to yield results. What is our hope for Nigeria? If you're watching this, I want you to just type in the comments and share what your hope for Nigeria is, because that is our focus. We want to keep the hope alive for Nigeria today. I can't tell you how excited I am to have Rev.Johnnie Moore in the studio with us today. Now, how did I find out about him? I had heard about him. I heard about some of his books. And then I watched this interview that he did with Nick Cannon. And first of all, Nick Cannon, I was like, whoa, Nick Cannon. But the fact that he wrote a book, I'll just read his bio, because y'all, I can ramble on and on and on about what I've been learning about Rev.Johnnie Moore. But let's learn about him. Johnnie Moore is the founder and CEO of the Kairos Company and president of the Congress of Christian Leaders. He was twice a presidential appointee to the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, serving during the Trump and Biden administrations. Previously, Reverend Moore was a senior vice president and campus pastor at Liberty University, and he was chief of staff and vice president of faith content for the United Artists Media Group in Hollywood. Throughout his career, Moore has advocated relentlessly for religious freedom in the Middle East, and he is a recipient of the Simon Wiesenthal Center's prestigious Medal of Valor for that work. Please join me, ICON family, to welcome Rev.Johnnie Moore to the studio.
Priscilla, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. I know you're traveling. I know you have so much other things that you could be doing right now, but I'm so grateful that you carved some time out to be with us today.
There's nothing more important than taking time to have conversations like this one. There's no country in the world that I admire more than Nigeria, and frankly breaks my heart more to see the present state of some people's lives and livelihood. And so, you know, any time, if I'm going to move my schedule around, if I'm traveling, if I'm on my iPhone like I am right now, if it's this subject, you know, I've got to take the time if I can.
Thank you so much. I know you're definitely not a stranger to ICON, but this is my first time having a conversation with you. And I know a lot of our guests might be wondering, oh, who is Johnnie Moore, and what is your background, and what got you into this conversation? Why do you do this? Why are you sitting down with us today?
Well, for the sake of this conversation, I mean, the first thing to highlight is, Rabbi Abraham Cooper and I co-wrote a book called The Next Jihad, focused on the situation in Nigeria, based upon our own experience going there, meeting with victims, sitting down and hearing firsthand their experiences, getting a handle on the situation. But you know, my work and advocacy for Nigeria is part of a bigger project. I mean, my entire adult life, I've been traveling to places where people are persecuted for their faith, either persecuted directly or indirectly. Persecution can happen in two ways. It can happen because someone shows up at your house and knocks on the door and says, "Are you a Christian, or are you a Jew, or you a Muslim?" and they attack you because of it. Persecution can also happen in a different way. They can societies and situations can develop in a way that governments and people in authority turn away, and they don't pay attention, and they allow terrorism. They allow criminal and corrupt activity to target minority communities, sometimes majority communities. And so I've invested a lot of my adult life on the sidelines of my professional life and being an advocate for persecuted people around the world.
Well, well, thank you. Some of our audience and our viewers and the Icon family have never read the book, The Next Jihad. I've started reading it, and I was just poring over it last night and this morning, and just realizing how firsthand the information is. Can you just give us a brief synopsis of The Next Jihad, and what inspired the book?
Yeah, I mean, the first and most important thing, if you're an advocate for human rights and religious freedom, I don't care what area you're focused on, but if you live in this world, the most important thing is always to sit down and to hear from the victims themselves.
Yeah.
And my friend Rabbi Cooper, who spent 50 years working on these issues all around the world, came to me one day. He the Jewish rabbi, me the evangelical Christian, and he says, "Johnny, when are we going to Nigeria?" You know, he was concerned about the beleaguered Christian community in parts of the country. And so right before COVID-19, literally weeks before the entire world shut down, he and I got on an airplane. We spent days in Abuja meeting in a carefully curated group of victims that came from all over the country. And we just sat for hours and hours and hours and heard their stories. And so The Next Jihad, it is a book that begins by painting the context, showing some of the history, helping a reader who may not know anything about Nigeria or that part of Africa or the world to understand the situation, but always the opportunity to tell the stories of the victims through their own words, not through our interpretation of the words, but through their own words. And then to call for action and to describe what some of those actions can be. And all of this within the context of an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, of an evangelical pastor, who our friendship has led us around the world in lots of different situations. So the subtext of the book is about the friendship between Christians and Jews. But I decided very, very early on, along with Rabbi Cooper, that we wanted to write a substantive book, but a brief book. It's not a long book. You know, it's a book that you can read in an afternoon or two. And I'm just really, really hoping that lots and lots of people decide to care about the issue after reading it.
Yeah, I loved that the book wasn't long and you could really get engaged with it. I'm excited to just talk a little bit about some of the topics you said, like hearing the stories from the victims and not your perspective, but theirs, and then creating some action steps. But someone may pick up that book and say jihad and have no clue what that word means and what it implies, because just saying jihad, implies something stronger than just, using a word like persecution. Could you expand upon that word for those who may have no idea what that context means?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to say that there are lots of Muslims around the world who don't use jihad in the way the terrorists do. There are huge reform movements in Islam where the appropriation of the word is about struggle. It's about spiritual struggle and all of these things. That's all true. I just want to say that up front. What's also true is that there are millions of terrorists who are hijacking their religion on a path to eliminate the Christian community and any Muslim that stands in their way under the auspices of a holy war, believing that God himself is justifying their mass murder of citizens of their country and other countries made in the image of God. And they do it under the banner of a jihad. And when we think about this word, we think about ISIS in Iraq and Syria, 2014 and 2015. We think about Al-Qaeda and some of these other groups. One of the, I guess, flags we wanted to wave, alarm bells we wanted to sound, is that the next jihad is under present circumstances probably not happening in the Middle East. It's probably happening in this part of the world. And in fact, I'm sorry to say, but that we wrote this book earlier in the year, but just a few days ago, foreign ministers from all around the world gathered in Rome in the coalition to combat ISIS. And the subject of the meeting wasn't Iraq and Syria. The subject of the meeting was the burgeoning jihad, the rise of ISIS in Nigeria and the neighboring countries in that part of Africa. And so I while this is largely happening in the shadows, the Boko Haram, for instance, the terrorist group, killed more Christians in 2014 in Nigeria alone than ISIS did in Iraq and Syria. So this is a very, very dangerous situation, and people need to awaken to it. Governments, individual citizens, anybody that cares about our world needs to be concerned about this fragile situation, all happening under the banner of a holy war, using the power of religion, not to save people, but to kill people. And that's a travesty. I don't care what your religion is.
I absolutely agree, and I apologize for some background noise if you get that in the background. But you and Rabbi Cooper were one of the first to use the word genocide. Why?
It's just, in plain language, this is the intent of these jihadists. I mean, this is the intent. They say it. You know, it's not like we're interpreting it. You know, it's not like this is our interpretation of the situation. They've made it clear, and it's not just one terrorist group. It's a combination of terrorist groups. And from the time that we started this book, you know, writing this book till now having this conversation, I mean, the next Jihad, the title of the book, you know, has expanded. I mean, we were largely talking about, and it's not just Nigeria, but we're talking about Nigeria. It's the largest country in Africa, the largest economy in Africa, 200 million people. A lot of this was for years in isolated areas in the northeast of the country. Well, in the last 6 months, we're now talking about the northwest and the northeast of the country. Now we're talking about instability in the southeast of the country in a different way. Now we're talking about the center of the country, where certain militarized and radicalized Fulani herdsmen, you know, are appropriating the techniques of Boko Haram and ISWAP. And so we're seeing whether it is a, you know, and again, we can't stereotype. Not every Fulani is a terrorist. The Fulani is the largest tribe on the continent of Africa. But there are certainly terrorists among them that are appropriating the same tactics as Boko Haram and ISIS in the center of the country. And one of the tactics is calling for the genocide and the removal of every single Christian, and, as I said a few minutes ago, every Muslim that stands in their way. Like, their game plan and their words are not for, you know, a terrorist insurgency to get resources and to get some territory. They want to get rid of everybody. And frankly, they've succeeded in some communities in Nigeria. They've wiped out some entire villages, hundreds and hundreds of churches. You know, in certain states of Nigeria, you know, you wake up every day and you wonder if you're going to survive if you're a Christian. This should not happen in our world, but it especially shouldn't happen in a country like Nigeria, as wealthy and powerful and glorious and as beautiful and influential as its people and its history is. It just can't happen. And the United States and the United Kingdom and other Western allies need to do more to help.
I love that you said we need to do more to help, because that's kind of where I'm going. I've heard you say that compassion requires action. And for a lot of people, it's you see it on the news. If you see it on the news or you hear about it and you're like, that's sad, but there's no clear path of action for the average American to get involved. So I just want to ask, what are some action suggestions you made in the book, or you might have thought of even past the book, that the average American can take in this fight against the genocide of Christians and non-militants in Nigeria?
Yeah, I mean, the premise is clear, right? If you care about something, do something about it. Or, Priscilla, you don't actually care about it. Okay, if you don't care enough about something to do something, then you're just virtue signaling. You're showing off, you know, and that we can't do that. People's lives are on the line. I mean, you know, in the book, we chronicle child after child, elderly person after elderly person, pastor after pastor, farmer after farmer. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So compassion requires doing something. Not enough to care if you're not going to act. Now, all that to say, Priscilla, it doesn't have to be grand actions. You know, we don't have to save the world ourselves. We can't save the world ourselves. Sometimes it's a small action, and sometimes actions. And you know what everybody can do that's listening to us? They can tell the stories of the victims. Just tell their stories. And that will move the hearts of people. It will move the hearts of people to
Wow.
pray. It'll move the hearts of people to call their politicians and to send emails to their elected officials. It'll
Mhm.
move the hearts of people to tell their families those stories,
Mhm.
to awaken the Nigerian diaspora around the world, in
Mhm.
the United
Mhm.
States, in the United Kingdom, and in other places. Things move in this country and around the world when people raise their voices, when people give to organizations that are working on advocacy or helping those that are in
Mhm.
need, when politicians decide to take a second look at an
Yeah.
appropriations bill unless things change, these sorts of
Yeah.
things. I don't care what you do, but do something. We have a whole list of things you can potentially do in the book.
Yeah, so I just want to pause and take a moment to just plug in this book. And this was not a plug for the book. We didn't have this conversation to plug the book. But one of the things you can do is learn about the stories, and this is to our audience, to read the books, read the things that have chronicled the stories. Icon has the book that has all the stories and just statistics. We need to get educated. So thank you so much, Reverend Johnnie Moore, for just we can tell their stories. Thank you so much. So this question, to figure out how to ask it, but I've heard you engage in this topic as you are a white male stepping into the narrative of Black Africans, and it could get very dicey. It could go from being it's a very thin line between being an ally and then coming in as a savior and having a savior complex. And I just want to say, because I've watched you several times in conversation, in interviews, just navigate the line with such wisdom and with such grace. And I want you to just share where that comes from and how can people who may be scared, maybe fellow white Americans or African Americans or any kind of American, people in privileged cultures that might be scared to step into the narrative because they don't want to come in as this person of privilege and with us savior mentality to stepping into the narrative. How will you suggest that they go about this, getting into this narrative?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I've I guess resolved in that area is I've just resolved I'm going to be misunderstood by someone. So, I'm a believing Christian, and the book of Galatians chapter 1 says, I think it's in verse 10, if you're worried about the opinions of people, you can't serve God, right? So I can't wake up every day and decide whether I'm going to say something or be something or believe something or work on something based upon whether it's controversial or people are going to misunderstand me or whatever. I just have to wake up and do what's right. But you can do that with humility. You can listen more, talk. You can sit with people who are different than you and different experiences, and you can confess from the very, very beginning that, I am probably going to say something that sounds offensive, but it's unintentional. I don't mean it that way. I just care. And you can come with a spirit of service. Like, I don't want to be an advocate for Nigeria or for other people around the world on the basis of my opinions and of my concerns and all of these things. Like, I want what Nigerians believe is best for their country. I don't want what I want. But also in the book, look, and again, I also don't want to make this about the book exclusively, but we talk about colonialism, and we talk about the role that the colonial approach and all of the resulting effects of that, how it pitted people against each other, and in many ways it laid the groundwork for the crisis that we're seeing. Right? I mean, for instance, the appropriation of Sharia law in certain states in Nigeria. This goes all the way back to the way the British Empire chose to use religion to maintain their power and these. This is just a fact. It's also true that because of the British, there are schools all across that part of the world that otherwise wouldn't have been there. Like, at the same time, it can all be true. People can do bad things and they can do good things, and it's our job to not be chained by the past, and yet to recognize the lessons from it, to speak for justice and to speak against injustice, and yet to also learn as a Christian that sometimes what the enemy means for evil, God means for good. Sometimes God can use it. God can use it for good. And this and one of the amazing things is that the Christianity in Nigeria that made it Africa's great Christian country, the largest Christian population on the continent, it didn't stick by the work of the colonial missionaries. It was when a Nigerian, whose story we tell in the book, brought Christianity to Nigeria. That's what sparked the Christian movement, in Nigeria. And I think people need to understand the whole of history, because I'll tell you what the jihadists want. The jihadists want to say this Christianity is imported, it isn't real. No, it is as Nigerian as anything in Nigeria. But we just tell the whole story. And look, Priscilla, I never want to be offensive in any of these areas, but I'm also I'm not going to look at myself in the mirror and say there could have been a child who was saved tomorrow if I would have had a little more courage and been a little less concerned about making a mistake along the way. Like, we just need to turn the temperature down, all work together, and we do. Then we're going to learn the lessons that everybody wants everybody to learn, but you can't learn them alone. You have to learn them together.
I love that so much. I love that we can't learn the lessons alone. We have to learn them together. Particularly, there's a lot of fear, even in the US, there's a lot of fear between races of making a mistake so we don't have conversations, rather than listening, learning, and then stepping into the conversation, knowing that everybody's not going to be, applauding you along the way. I appreciate that you have stepped into the conversation alongside Rabbi Abraham Cooper, and it's just such a blessing, such a blessing. The question then is, you wrote the book, I believe, at the beginning of this year, or no, before you visited Nigeria before COVID last year. The book came out. Have you seen a difference? Some people say we're doing all of this work. Is there hope? And can my speaking or telling somebody's story make a difference? Is there hope? And if there is, what is your hope for Nigeria?
I love that question. Number one, there's always hope. And even if there wasn't hope, we shouldn't change how loud we raise our voices and how hard we work to realize that vision. And yet there is hope. The good news is more people are paying attention to this than ever before. The good news is there was an entire meeting a few days ago in Rome of foreign ministers around the world paying attention to the issue. The issue is getting more press than it's gotten before. Politicians are paying to the issue, and themselves, including in political leadership in the country, across religions and politics, are being forced to address.
We lost your sound. I think you're muted. If you just hit the mute button again, it's still showing us that you're muted. Oh, there it is. There it is.
I'm back. Okay.
We're back.
So, this the challenges of traveling doing this on the iPhone. But what I was saying was that even among politicians themselves in Nigeria, people are being forced to answer the questions, and the problem can't be ignored. So we're making progress on those fronts, yes. And yet there's one thing that discourages me, Priscilla.
Yes.
This is the single, in my opinion, most dangerous situation in the world from a national security perspective, from a human rights perspective. The most egregious things are happening in this part of the world, and yet there's still too little attention to it. We have to do more. I don't understand why people don't pay more attention to this issue. And then what is my hope for Nigeria? Look, I love Nigeria. I love Nigerians. I love the church in Nigeria. I Muslim friends in Nigeria too. Like I sat with government officials in government and out of government when I was over there. I liked people on both sides of the conversation. There were things to work on. Like, my hope is that Nigeria is freed of this security concern, that its economy is freed, that people don't have to ride down streets in terror that they're going to be kidnapped by someone, who's going to sell them to Boko Haram. I want to see Africa's most brilliant, affluent, amazing country thriving like it's never thrived before. And I believe it's totally possible. But we can't rely on the political leaders or the militaries or all of these people to do it. We all have to work on it ourselves. We have to decide what type of future that we want for our world, and we all have to do our part. And one of the things that I'm saying is, this American has no interest in dictating to Nigeria what Nigerians need for themselves. But I am here saying, my hands are open. I'm here to serve. I'm going to do what I can to make sure that Nigerians and Nigeria's future generations don't just look at a brilliant past, but enjoy an amazing, amazing future. These problems can be solved. They just take the will to solve them. And I pray that all of us and everyone listening to this conversation will decide to do a little more to make that future reality.
Amen. Oh my gosh, this has been such an honor, such a joy to talk to you. I'm hoping that we'll get to do this again when you're all at home, and we'll have a part 2, because I want to dive into just everything you've said even more. I want to thank you as a Nigerian who hesitates a lot of times. It's a lot of people. I was a Nigerian who worked with many American missionaries that had a very false mindset on what it means to be involved with another culture. And I want to thank you, to say thank you for the grace and the humility that you've stepped into this conversation. And thank you for using your platform to speak on behalf of people that we know, my family at home, that may not be able to speak as loudly as you can. So we pray that God continues to expand your platform. I have one last question before we go. Why should people get your book?
The people listening to us care about the issue. If you want someone else to understand the issue and care about the issue, give the book to them. Just get a copy and give it to them. I'm doing it myself. I'm giving away, 500 or 700 copies to a speech I'm doing, next week. We wrote the book to try to catalyze a movement of concern and prayer and action on these issues. And that's my advice to people. If you're frustrated that people aren't paying attention and that they don't care, somebody, maybe I'll do this, but somebody ought to just go buy a copy for every member of Congress and give them to state houses, all across. This book is meant to catalyze a movement of compassion and concern for that part of that beautiful, amazing continent. So that's my advice to people. The people listening to us care. They're engaged in the issue. They know what we have to do is we got to get other people to do it, and that's why we wrote it, just to help them do that.
Thank you. I'm going to be buying 5 copies today. So I want to challenge everybody to do that today because you say, how can I help? This is I love that. It's so practical. We can hold it in our hand and say, this is how you can learn more. This is how you can help. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy traveling schedule and having this conversation with us. I hope I get to talk to you again soon. Have a blessed rest of your day.
Thank you, Priscilla. It was a real honor. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you. So you've all heard it. I'm buying my copies. I don't know about you, but that's what's happening. My copies are getting bought today. And you might receive one from me, or you should be buying for someone else. I love the balance. For some of us who are Africans, you want to hear the balance in, yes, be involved, but yes, be an ally, not a savior. And I love the balance of the book and of what I've read so far. So thank you for joining us in this episode of Hear Their Voices. Again, my name is Priscilla Ozodo-Acevedo. Follow us on social media. Follow me on social media, and continue in the conversation. And we would love to hear from you, y'all. So this season, we really want to hear from you. Leave your comments in the comments box whatever the thing is on the bottom of YouTube. Leave your comments. We want to hear from you. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. If you're not sure how to get involved, let us know and we'll send you some information. Have a blessed week. Until next week, God bless you.